Now for a further look at where we stand with this situation concerning Kim Jong-un's visit to Seoul, we have with us Professor Min Jeong-hun from the Korean National Diplomatic Academy. It's good to have you on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So to summarize, the Blue House has said that there's been currently no word from North Korea on the invitation for Kim to visit Seoul. But they also went on to say that there is no rush, there's no need for a rush, but the possibility remains open. But it seems to me that the presidential office is trying to now lower expectations, whereas previously they had been trying to raise it. Do you see it that way?
Well, I think that it reflects the current situation of the matter. The Blue House official said there has been no contact from North. And so what Chongade is not willing to the push or hurry means that the Blue House doesn't want the push North Korea to make a decision to visit Seoul as early as possible. The Chongwade or the Blue House clarified what is important is not the meeting date, but the result. But I think that the Chongwade will continue to make a preparation for a possible visit and is waiting for the Chairman Kim's decision. So it all depends on the situation is ongoing.
So it seems to me that a lot of these rumours of reports about the preparations for this visit were because there is so much to prepare because of this logistical reasons about Kim Jong-un coming. I mean, what are some of the concerns that the Blue House has?
Well, you know, I believe that the Blue House has got lots of their concerns and lots of scenarios to prepare for the visit because it's all new for the history of the country, and even except for the main topics of the summit, the South Korean government is likely to care much about various things. Among them, I think that the security or the safety of the Chairman Kim is the most important consideration during his visit to Seoul. For example, for the hotel, Chairman Kim will stay during his visit to Seoul, 2 hotels. So there have been lots of the rumors about that, but the other 2 hotels, specifically the first Walkway Hotel, where the North Korean delegates stayed in February this year, and Grand Hyatt Hotel, where the U.S. president stayed, that have been talked much. And during the stay, Chairman Kim will also visit the various places, including the industrial facilities that can show the South Korea's economic achievements and possibly Hanla Mountain. You know, and they think about how difficult it could be to secure the Chairman Kim's security in open places like that. But anyway, it is known that the South Korean government is making concerted effort to secure Chairman Kim's safety successfully during his visit. Many things to do for the South Korean government.
So South Korean Blue House seems to be actively preparing for this visit, but some might question why make these preparations now before the North has even replied that he will decide to come. I mean, why is President Moon pushing ahead with this, the preparations? I mean, is it just a calculated risk or some tactic to put pressure on Kim Jong-un to move negotiations forward?
But as I mentioned earlier today, our government, the Moon government, doesn't want to push North Korea to make the decision to visit Seoul, because if the South Korean government pushes North Korea for the visit, the North Korea would be more hesitant to make a decision, because why the Chairman Kim doesn't make a decision at this point could have several reasons for him, but we can talk those kind of things later today. But there could be various reasons why the Moon government's Moon administration is preparing for the possible budget. But among them, I think that it is related to what kind of the behavior of North Korean government or the Chairman Kim or his predecessors showed in the past. In terms of the talks with the South Korean government, North Korean government or the top leaders, they didn't want to announce or just let the South Korean government know that in advance, some kind of the time ahead of the event, and instead they waited for the last moment and just let South Korean government know about some kind of the upcoming events at the very last moment. So the South Korean government and the Moon administration knows that kind of the behavior fully. So that's why the Moon administration is preparing the possible visit this time, although North Korea remains silent.
So why do you think North Korea is remaining silent? I mean, what are they hesitating, or are they? Is this a tactic to try and make these South Koreans wait? I mean, what do you think is going through Kim Jong-un's mind right now?
Well, I think that Chairman Kim is hesitant because it's not clear what kind of the achievements he can get from the visit. Of course, becoming the first North Korean top leader who has an official visit to the South could have some the great meaning itself. But such a political meaning could not be enough. And the Chairman Kim want to get some substantial achievements from the visit. Now, as you know, recently the North Korea has been focused on relieving academic sanctions imposed to it, and possibly the Chairman Kim want to get some the meaningful results from from his visit to Seoul. But the relieving academic sanctions go with the North Korean denuclearization measures. And North Korea and the U.S. have shown the very different arguments about that and has been very slow to make progress about that. So in terms of such kind of the concerns, it seems that the Chairman Kim is taking some time and much time before he makes a decision.
Most North Korea analysts I've spoken to, and others seem to have spoken to as well, say that it's not going to happen this year because Kim Jong-un just doesn't have enough to gain out of a trip to Seoul. Are you on that same boat?
Well, it's not clear when the Chairman Kim will visit Seoul because as I mentioned earlier today, it all depends on whether or not the North Korean leader Chairman Kim to make a decision about the denuclearizing itself. And recently it is reported that U.S. could take corresponding measures, such as declaration to end the Korean War and establishing a liaison office in Pyongyang, and possibly a way of relieving academic sanctions. Is not exactly the relieving U.S. sanctions or the UN sanctions. We can find the alternatives to that. And the U.S. could take such the corresponding measures if North Korea makes significant progress in terms of denuclearizing itself, such as declaration and the verification of Yongbyon nuclear facilities and possibly dismantling some of its ICBMs or nuclear warheads. So I think that Chairman Kim's decision to take such denuclearization the measures will be followed by his decision to visit Seoul. So we need to wait and see. And there's no time limit about his decision to do that.
But do you think there still remains a possibility that he could visit before the end of the year, even without perhaps making these decisions? Is there any reason for him to visit?
Well, but it all depends on the relationships or the relations between the denuclearization measure and the U.S. corresponding measures. But think about the remaining time by the end of this year. We just left 20 more days to go before the end of this year. So physically, technically, it was not easy for Chairman Kim to make a decision to visit Seoul in terms of the security, logistics, and other things. But still, as Bull House said, there is still open the possibility, but we need to wait and see. And by the end of this year, if the Chairman Kim visit to South Korea, it would be great. but you know, so in the early next year, sometime in the early next year, would be fine for the visit.
From what I hear, those officials at the presidential Blue House are perhaps making sure that they don't go anywhere too far for the Christmas holidays as well, because they might have to be busy. And that same applies for us as well, unfortunately. Anyway, let me move on to some other developments with North Korea before we go. So North Korean Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho visited Beijing last week, and he met with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, North Korean state media reported that they reaffirmed their bilateral ties and didn't reveal much else. But what do you think they would have talked about at this visit? I mean, what would Ri Yong-ho have to say to President Xi about the current situation in North Korea?
Well, basically, when Ri Yong-ho met the Chinese official, that he tried to request China to support what North Korea wants from North Korea-U.S. negotiations. But you know, I think that the current, the recent North Korea-China talks represents that North Korean diplomacy resumes its moves. You know, in terms of the impasse, the impasse of the North Korea, the U.S. the negotiations, the North Korean diplomacy remained almost silent for the past 2 weeks. So what the North Korean diplomacy resumes means that possibly North Korea has finished its internal discussions over its denuclearization measures and U.S. corresponding measures and resumes its diplomatic moves for its decisions. So, you know, what the recent North Korea-China talks shows that North Korea is ready to move forward in terms of the denuclearization itself and receiving corresponding measures from the United States. And what the North Korea did in the past, before the second summit, or the first summit with the United States in June this year, and the North Korea leader, Chairman Kim, met the President Xi in support to get the support from the China before he got the summit with the United States. So possibly the recent the North Korea and China talks represents or replicate that kind of movement, and it shows that the North Korea is ready to move forward and ready to talk to the United States for the denuclearization measures.
I mean, but still, this relationship between China and North Korea, I mean, where you know, how has it changed over the last few months, as in, like, with this situation with North Korea and the US and denuclearization? I mean, where does it go from here then?
Well, you know, so as you mentioned, possibly the North Korea, the China, the relations could be changed for the past several months, but still, basically, the two-country relations has not been changed, I think. You know, still China wants North Korea to be a buffer zone in terms of the blocking the U.S. the troops on the Korean Peninsula, or the right in front of the Chinese continent, and still the North Korea still wants the China to stand behind the country, when the North Korea talked to the United States. So still the two countries got some kind of the interest that they have in common. But in terms of the strong leadership of the President Trump, that he didn't want the China to stand behind the North Korea, and as he mentioned in June this year, so China was a little careful in terms of the officially helping or assisting North Korea in terms of the relieving sanctions and other things. So the China and the North Korea has got a little bit different interest in terms of the surrounding the countries on the Korean Peninsula. But basically, still, both sides want the other one. So the China welcomes the North Korea's diplomatic moves and welcome the other diplomatic talks recently.
That's where we'll have to wrap things up. But thank you for coming in, Professor, as always, and sharing us your thoughts with us.
Okay, thank you.